Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Management of Intellectual Capital and Organizational Knowledge webinar presented by Assistant Chief Matt McBurney of the Aurora Fire Department. Today's webinar is sponsored by All American Fire Equipment. And so we have a video to share from them real quick. Here it is.
Welcome to All American Fire Equipment. Hi, I'm Don Newland, President and owner of All American Fire Equipment. All of us at All American Fire are proud to be your premier fire truck, emergency vehicle, and fire equipment dealer in Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. Our mission is to provide practical advice, innovative fire apparatus, and responsive service to equip and safeguard those who protect us. We have no grand sales pitch. We are perfectly uncomplicated. We sell quality fire trucks and equipment at a fair price, and we service what we sell. We are proud to be teamed up with the industry's leading manufacturers. The All-American team and all of our partners are deeply devoted to helping you do your job to the highest and safest of standards. We love serving firefighters, and we appreciate your business. This year, 2020, is our 30th year anniversary at All-American Fire Equipment. It all started in 1990 with our founder and a team of 5 and an inverted 5-gallon bucket to serve as the president's desk chair. From those very humble beginnings, the company grew and evolved based on the fundamental belief that providing incredible service, high integrity, and a broad offering of the best trucks and products can simplify the chaotic life of firefighters. Today, All American Fire Equipment serves all of Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia from 3 service centers in Canton, Ohio, Washington Courthouse, Ohio, and Ona, West Virginia, as well as a distributed team of sales and service technicians across the region. We also service all brands of fire trucks and emergency vehicles, and we represent 187 of the best manufacturers of fire equipment that this industry has to offer. All American Fire Equipment stands ready to serve you with our 3 areas of dedicated sales and service offerings: new fire apparatus sales, fire equipment sales, and complete service options for all brands of fire apparatus and emergency vehicles. For new fire apparatus, All American Fire Equipment could not be more proud to partner with Rosenbauer America to outfit departments with custom-built vehicles to meet their specific needs. Not everyone knows that Rosenbauer is actually the world's largest manufacturer of fire apparatus, with 11 manufacturing facilities worldwide and 4 in the United States. Rosenbauer is the global leader, famous for bringing new firefighting technologies and resources to market, but even with that scale, Rosenbauer remains a family-owned business with people as its core value and longtime partnerships that have helped us build and deliver the most innovative and the most safe fire trucks on the market. Our service team consists of certified technicians in 3 service centers with a mobile service truck fleet that is tactically located to serve you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have professional and trained EVT technicians with the latest apparatus knowledge prepared to respond to your apparatus requirements regardless of the brand. Sometimes it's not safe or possible to bring an apparatus to us. That's why we offer on-site service rates as well as the ability to perform service in our service centers. All American Fire partners with the top manufacturers of fire department gear and equipment, from thermal imaging cameras to rescue tools to chemical foams to turnout gear. We currently source from an incredible 187 suppliers to find the right balance between innovation, safety, and common sense. It's complex, so just give us a call. Our sales consultants are discerning and well-informed on the right equipment for every budget. All American Fire Equipment's entire sales and service and office staff understand the needs of firefighters. Everyone on our team is committed to doing the utmost to meet your needs. Please count on us to help identify a needed part or equipment and to provide it at a competitive price and in a timely manner. Whatever your needs may be, either large or small, we stand ready to serve you. We invite you to visit us online at allamericanfire.us. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, so please be sure to give us a like. Further, we could not be more proud of the heroic efforts that you're doing, and we are happy to encourage, promote, or share your efforts with the community. If you would like us to post something about an activity or an event or recognition within your department, please let us know and we'll be sure to create something to share on our social accounts. We hope we can come alongside you to amplify your department's strengths. Hi, I'm Don Newland.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Matthew McBurney, and I'm flattered to see that we have 30 people logged in. The topic, the thing I'm going to speak to you about is something I developed for the Officer Development Conference that was supposed to take place this summer, and we of course know why that didn't happen. Why that didn't happen due to COVID. And I appreciate the opportunity to share this information in this alternative format or venue. So I'll give you a little personal introduction about myself before we dive into the material. I started out as a volunteer firefighter and an EMT in 1994 with Edinburgh Township Volunteer Fire Department in Portage County. And I enjoyed that so much that I decided to change my life in my 20s, choose a different direction, and became a full-time firefighter paramedic in 1997 with the Aurora Fire Department. I've been with the city of Aurora ever since. And of course, within that organization, I've progressed from firefighter paramedic to lieutenant captain, and now I'm the assistant fire chief here. Early in my career, I learned that at Cuyahoga Community College, where I took my fire academy training, that they would give you some college credit for that. And they also offered an Associate of Applied Science degree. So I said, I'll take the credits I have for Fire Academy and add a few more classes. And by 2001, working part-time, I had knocked out an Associate of Applied Science degree in Fire Technology. And then, of course, that year, 2001, of course, we all know what a change our personal lives and our whole nation experienced with the terrorist attack on September 11th. And it was in the year following the September 11th terrorist attack that I enlisted in the U.S. Navy Reserve. They had a program where they were appealing to civilian paramedics with the pitch that, hey, we recognize the medical training you have in the civilian world, and we think that'd be awesome awesome for us to use that in the military. If you'll enlist with us, we'll skip the medical training that young recruits normally need out of high school. We'll send you to some basic Navy training, and then we'll put you right in as a Navy reservist. So I answered that call following September 11th and became a Navy hospital corpsman. Navy hospital corpsmen, if you're not familiar with the Navy and Marine Corps jargon or lingo, are akin to the Army's medics or civilian paramedics. Navy hospital corpsmen, in addition to their medical training, take training with the Marines so that they can function with them in the field and the environments that Marines operate in. There's the name has changed since then, but it used to be called Field Medical Service School. It's one in Camp Pendleton in California, one on the East Coast at Camp Lejeune. And I, of course, completed those schools. And it wasn't long after that that the 3rd Battalion, 25th Marines, which was my assignment as a Navy hospital corpsman, was deployed in Operation Iraqi Freedom. So I'm speaking to an audience that's Ohio-centric, I believe, and most of you, I believe, are old enough to remember 2005. The 3rd Battalion, 25th Marines was in the headlines quite a bit because if you look at, as I noted on the screen, the headquarters company, the weapons company, and one of the rifle companies were all based in large metropolitan parts of Ohio, and there were a lot of Ohio connections between the hospital corpsmen and the Marines that served with the 3rd Battalion, 25th Marines. So this kind of picture of me with some of my Marines that I served with in Iraq. And down the lower left is a picture of me with my wife and my 2 boys when I returned from Iraq. And I'm proud to say currently my son, who is 3 years old, pictured there, is actually at Marine Corps boot camp right now. He enlisted himself. So I mentioned my experience with the Navy and Marines because I found that within the Navy and Marine Corps culture, they had a very robust, strong training program for leadership. It wasn't, even though I had some prior experience in the fire service before getting involved with the Navy and Marine Corps, it was in the Navy and Marine Corps where I really learned that leadership wasn't about, it wasn't particularly about following the orders of the guy who's senior because he's a nice guy, or following the orders of whoever's in charge because they have the authority to make your life difficult or inflict punishment on you, but that leadership was about motivating people. It was really a people skill. It was about motivating people to accomplish what the organization needs done. So following that experience, my next kind of significant influence in terms of leadership was I was offered the privilege and the opportunity to attend the Ohio Fire Executive Program. I was a member of Class 9 pictured here. And once again, after participating in the OFE program, somebody said near the conclusion of the program, hey, you know that OFE is worth like 12 college credits if you want to do something with that. And I went ahead and rolled that over to the University of Cincinnati and completed my Bachelor of Science in Fire and Safety Engineering. And then most recently, I just completed a Master's in Public Administration at Anna Maria College. So I tell you all kind of that background because if you've never met me before, you're just tuning in, you weren't fazed by the title, which can be a little intimidating in this program, but you might be wondering, you know, who is this guy and is there any reason that I should listen to what he has to say? So with the introduction out of the way, again, management of intellectual capital and organizational knowledge sounds like a lot of corporate speak. I recognize that. It's, you know, as the cartoon says, it's almost, corporate speak's almost a way to speak without saying anything. Nobody talks like that. Nobody says, hey, Jim, hi, Bob, how you doing? Hey, how you doing with organizational knowledge and intellectual capital management at your department? Oh, we're doing great. Nobody talks like that. So the fact that you looked at the title of this and said that you'd like to know more about, I really appreciate. So in talking about this isn't just something that I took a class about and I said, I'd like to regurgitate that for you because I think it would be beneficial to you. I actually found direct application of what I learned about this topic, and it made a difference in my organization and my career. So I'd like to present it to you kind of in the setting or the format of telling you a story. So the setting for the story is the city of Aurora, Ohio. City of Aurora is about a 5 mile by 5 mile, pretty neat square, 25 square miles of area that we cover. Has a population of 18,000 people. As of last year, our annual combined EMS and fire call volume is running right at about 2,400 calls a year. And we're a combination full and part-time department with 40 some firefighter paramedics, three captains and 3 lieutenants. You can all understand how that would work, 1 per shift. We also have a full-time chief, a full-time assistant chief, and a full-time administrative assistant. So whether your organization is smaller than this, as I'm familiar with, you know, very small volunteer organizations, or if your organization is 3, 4, 5, 10 times larger than this, I think the lessons learned here are going to be applicable. It's just a matter of scale. You can scale it up or scale it down. So what happened in this setting, the foundation for my story is we had a period of a span of approximately 1.5 years within which we had 3 senior officers retire. And these officers had a combined total years of experience, years of service to the city of Aurora that was totaled approximately 100 years. So when these 3 individuals retired, I asked the question, what went out the door with those three individuals? One of them was our EMS coordinator. So you no doubt are familiar with the functions that an EMS coordinator performs for a fire department, for a combined fire and EMS department. There's a lot of it has to do with EMS education, relationships with the hospital, quality assurance, run reviews, education, supplies. So much that an EMS coordinator does is critical to our current combined fire and EMS agencies. And we lost that individual. We also lost an individual who was a subject matter expert on new radio technology, and this at a time when we had just gone through the conversion in the VHF frequencies to narrow banding, and then we were making the next leap to get out of VHF and go to the Marks radio system. And while one of these individuals that retired was a significant subject matter expert on radio technology, he was also somebody who was largely involved in implementation of a new tablet-based EMS reporting system. We had just got off clipboards and carbon paper run sheets, transitioning to electronic reports and tablets. And this individual was the one who worked with the vendor when we were selecting what software package to go to. He was the point of contact with the vendor for system. He was the point of contact, or the primary one, to educate our personnel as we implemented the system, troubleshooting when things weren't going right. So he was very pivotal in that role. He also happened to be a GIS, Geographic Information System expert, and the whole city was able to avoid hiring a GIS expert at the planning, zoning, and building department because we had somebody in-house at the fire department who was knowledgeable on that. And one nice thing about having that in-house was that it gave us better control of naming streets and assigning numbers so as to avoid confusion and misunderstandings, duplications, and so forth. But not only we, but the city lost that individual. Also, we had just gone to switching to the Active 911 brand of software. I think most departments are familiar with their software and the app that firefighters can have on their smartphone that alerts you of a 911 emergency. It gives you a lot of descriptive information from dispatch. It has an interactive map that can guide you to the call. And again, we had just gotten up and running with this new system, and this one of the individuals that retired was kind of our main person that worked on implementing that within our department. Also out the door went the head of our Fire Prevention Bureau. He had a great deal of relational capital that was related to the local fire alarm and sprinkler installers and the owners and the maintenance men from a multitude of commercial occupancies in our building. For the past 15 years, in his capacity as head of the Fire Prevention Bureau, he was familiar with every construction project from plans review through final inspection and awarding a certificate of occupancy. So he had a great deal of knowledge about the fire prevention systems in the buildings in our town. Aside from fire prevention, he was somebody who was a whiz with spreadsheets, and he had spreadsheets that tracked everything. He had, tracking hours and budget expenses for payroll, overtime assignments, everything that you could want to track and control. He had created a spreadsheet for, and he was really a whiz with spreadsheets. And again, when he retired, there wasn't really anybody prepared to step in exactly and take that place. So most of us are familiar with the concept of a SWOT assessment. The acronym comes from the letters S, W, O, and T, and this is a tool that's used in strategic planning for organizational leaders. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And as I looked at what occurred in my organization, I found that in the wake of these three individuals retiring, there were multiple instances in which our organization had to take 2 steps backwards before we could take 1 forward. And this, to me, indicated that there was a weakness in our organization. And at the same time, there was an opportunity identified in an area that we could improve. So that's kind of the warm-up introduction, what we're going to talk about, and the spoiler. If you want to know, if you can't stay till the end, the spoiler is the answer is something called knowledge management. So not only is it important for our organizations to acquire and bring in knowledge, but it's important that we have a way to share it within the organization so that we can retain it over time. So again, that was kind of the warm up, and now we'll dive right in to management of intellectual capital and organizational knowledge. When you talk about capital, by definition, if we go to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, capital is something that is an asset that adds to the long-term net worth of a corporation. So we're talking about something big. When we use the term capital, it's often in the context of phrases like capital improvements, capital budgets, capital expenses, investment capital. Battleships and aircraft carriers are capital ships, relative to our nation's assets. So capital is about big things, big important things. However, we're not talking about things in the tangible sense. We're talking about something that's kind of intangible, but no less important to our organizations. So intellectual capital can be viewed as being comprised of three pillars or elements. Human capital refers to our people. Obviously, their knowledge, their skills, their experience, their wisdom is all important to the organization. And unless we have a program to share what they have with others, when they go out the door, that capital leaves with them. Relational capital are the relationships our people have developed with customers and suppliers, with the community. And then structural capital is not about physical structures, but about organizational structures that we can create and that we can implement that allow us to share and preserve the knowledge that we have, and therefore enhancing the delivery of our services and the performance of our organization for the community. So human capital, the first of the three pillars. We hire people hopefully based on a certain minimum threshold of knowledge, skills, and abilities, but we also want to find people with the right attitude, because we know that on top of starting with a good attitude, we can add more knowledge and we can add more skills and we can add more abilities to these people. So when we look at the human capital, the value of our people is comprised not only of the type of knowledge they have that's explicit knowledge, which are facts and data that can be passed on through reading and writing, but they have implicit knowledge, which is something that people pick up with years of experience. They often will tell you, well, I just know that this or that is true based on my previous experience, but I can't really tell you exactly why. And that's something called tacit knowledge. Relational capital, that second pillar that we spoke of, is about relationships built between members of our organization and suppliers, vendors, local politicians, community groups, the business owners in our community, the maintenance staff. When you're talking about fire prevention and you want a building to stay current on their fire alarm testing, their fire sprinkler testing, you want to know the name and the contact information for the maintenance man in that building and the owner of that building, so that you can make sure that everything's being kept up to snuff. We have relationships with the people that build, sell, service, and repair our fire apparatus, our EMS equipment, software, radios, hose testing, pump testing. When you're hiring people, the people administer polygraph tests and many more. There's just a host and a multitude of relationships that our personnel in our organizations build with people outside our organizations that we want to be able to preserve even after the time that they retire or leave our organizations. So structural capital, again, the third one of these pillars, is not about brick and mortar structures, but more it is that we need to have an organizational culture of openness, one that values collaboration versus information hoarding, information control. SOPs that direct after-action briefings can be considered an example of a structure that's designed to share information within our organizations. If the SOP says after a fire or rescue or other significant type of event, we're going to have an after-action debriefing, and we're going to talk about what went well, what didn't go well, and what we could do better in the future. That's an example of a structure that's designed to share knowledge within our organizations. If your organization participates in any type of applied research, we've seen as new understandings about fire behavior and recommended tactics flow out of the studies conducted by Underwriters Laboratories. We see that there's fire departments that support and participate in those activities. We don't all have those type of opportunities, but maybe your local health or hospital system is engaged in some kind of research that's going to have a positive impact on patient outcomes and EMS delivery. Participating in these is a way to increase our structural capital for organizational knowledge. Mentorships and apprenticeships, assignments, or structures where we have people assigned to partner with other people that are junior with them, and an organizational expectation is implied, or not implied, but directly stated, that we expect them to share their knowledge, their information, and their lessons learned with those junior people, are again structures that we want to seriously consider implementing within our organizations. Quality assurance programs that are typically seen for EMS run reviews are another example of a structure that you can have within your organization to preserve and share knowledge. So we kind of boiled down intellectual capital and organizational knowledge into this concept of knowledge management. Knowledge management programs are ones that promote the creation and acquisition of new knowledge, as well as the sharing and transferring of existing knowledge within our organizations. So new explicit knowledge can be acquired through schooling. Having people attend additional schooling builds up their knowledge, and by their membership and participation in our organization's knowledge grows. But just as well, or maybe even more importantly, sharing and transferring knowledge that takes place in different relationships between our employees can be just as important as the acquisition of new knowledge coming into our organizations. So I asked the question, why is this relevant? So this sounds like, again, corporate speak and concepts that come from the business world, where the goal is to perform better than your competitors, to sell more widgets, or to earn more money for the shareholders. We may be in an environment where we aren't directly competing against another fire department to meet the needs of our community, but we should be competing against ourselves to always be better than we were before. We want our response times this year to be better than they were last year. We want our outcomes on cardiac arrests to be better this year than they were last year. In every way that we're measured, we always want to be competing against our previous track record, looking to better ourselves and enhance our services to the community. So that's why this kind of information is relevant, even though we're not in the business world. So we talked about 3 pillars of intellectual capital. Now I'd like to speak briefly about 2 types of organizational knowledge. So as we touched on earlier, explicit knowledge are the things that can be written in books and transferred to others if they're willing to read it. This is the source or the making of textbooks, such as you would find for Fire Academy or other vocational topics beyond Fire Academy that apply to us. We know that the National Fire Academy has created and endorsed a fire and emergency services higher education curriculum for colleges, encouraging our personnel to encourage a degree that follows one of these fire and emergency services higher education curriculums is one means of increasing the value of the human capital in our organization and growing the volume of knowledge. So tacit knowledge is, again, that practical intelligence or knowledge that is often described as intuition. It's something that people acquire over years of experience. They'll tell you they just know something is true, even though they can't explain why. And we can grow our human capital by giving people who have this tacit knowledge opportunities to acquire that and share it with their coworkers and fellow members of the organization. So back to my perspective, where I looked at what we experienced when we lost nearly 100 years of experience in a short time, and we were at times taking 2 steps back before we could take 2 steps forward. My weakness assessment was that within our own organization, there was a lack of interest in pursuing a college degree in fire technology or EMS. So we talked about the value of the curriculum as proposed and endorsed by the National Fire Academy. If you look at our own fire service standards, such as NFPA Standard 1021, the standard for fire officer professional qualifications, you look and see there that many of the requirements or attributes that are expressed as being ideal or desirable can be acquired through higher education in college. Another part of the weakness assessment that is a little bit off track but related to what we're talking about here is that within my organization, we had officers whose job description described that they were responsible for conducting on-shift fire training, but they had never, even though it had been responsible for years of fire training, had never earned their state fire instructor card. And as part of my weakness assessment, I was making it a goal to remedy that and set that right. Again, looking at my own organization, as I'm telling the story of how this was applicable to me in the Aurora Fire Department, I observed that our fire chief and our assistant fire chief had college degrees, and I was considering what's the succession going to look like in a few years. Now, would the organization be comfortable, or would they be uncomfortable or unsatisfied if the political leaders of your jurisdiction saw value in having department heads who are responsible for multi-million-dollar budgets, if they felt that a person that makes that kind of salary and has that kind of responsibility ought to have a college degree, and they went outside because the organization was lacking personnel from the inside who were suitable to be groomed for that type of position. So there's no one size fits all answer to that, but it's the kind of question that's worth thinking about in the back of your mind when you're evaluating the value of promoting college education for firefighters and fire officers. So here's a screenshot that comes from the Ohio Association of Professional Firefighters, and most of you, I hope, are aware that they recently rolled out a program where, in partnership with Eastern Gateway Community College, firefighters can work toward achieving an Associate of Applied Science degree for no tuition cost. And as I looked at trying to address the weaknesses that I saw in my organization with regard to a lack of interest in pursuing at least an associate degree, of course, the cost of tuition was a big expense, and this has kind of been a godsend for taking away one of the excuses that people might throw up when you take a young firefighter and you ask what their goals are long-term over their career, what they'd like to accomplish, what kind of responsibilities they might be interested in the organization. If one of the answers is, yeah, I'd be interested in college, but I can't afford the tuition, here's an answer that right away takes care of one of the biggest problems we see. And this is more from the Eastern Gateway Community College website. And if you look in the left column, the second block down, under other programs, they have a fire science program available. And I can tell you that I have at least 2 in my small organization, 2, possibly 3, already working on their associate degree in applied science in fire technology through this free benefit that's being offered. Again, between the Ohio professional firefighters, and Eastern Gateway Community College. So one of the things that I addressed with my people internally here was professional development counseling, again, looking toward addressing that weakness, what I perceived as a weakness in the organization. I think it's a great value to take the people who have potential, to encourage and motivate them to reach out and pursue these type of college experiences, again, because it's increasing the amount of knowledge in our organization. Any way that we can help remove barriers. Tuition, I know that there are some jurisdictions, amazingly, that offer 100% tuition reimbursement, and if at least you earn a certain grade, like a C in the class. City of Aurora is not one of those communities. I have spoken with our mayor and our human resources director to try to promote this concept, but I've been as yet unsuccessful. It would be nice if when our city managers and our mayors attend their municipal league meetings, if somebody could give a motivational talk that would convince them all to offer this. But in the meantime, where this is a relatively rare thing to have tuition reimbursement available, can we at least, as a department, underwrite and support the cost of books and other expenses that might be an impediment to our people pursuing a college education? In some communities, there are incentives, whether the collective bargaining agreement might offer some kind of premium to the salary for earning a given degree, or whether it's the civil service structure offering credit toward promotion. Importantly, perhaps more important than those aforementioned items is, does your culture affirm the value of higher education? Is it spoken of in positive terms, and are you promoting a positive view of it? The Ohio Fire Chiefs, of course, is on board with this. You'll recognize this image. You see it in almost every quarterly issue of our In Command magazine and other Ohio Fire Chiefs publications. If you start at the base of the ladder there, of course, you see that firefighter 1, firefighter 2, EMT, those are all, of course, vocational training opportunities. Again, all good knowledge, good foundations to have on your way up. And as the Ohio Fire Chiefs model recommends, when you get to be around the supervisor level, as we get into lieutenants and captains, it's entirely appropriate and useful and helpful for these fire officers to work toward an associate or a bachelor's degree. There's other experiences that can benefit them as well. There's a host of leadership programs like the Maxwell series offered by the Ohio Fire Chiefs and the Ohio Fire Executive Program. And then as you work your way up the ladder, we're looking at credentialing and master's degree and so forth. So again, the Ohio Fire Chiefs is setting the example statewide, promoting these things. Are we promoting these types of things within our own organizations? So I've been there, and I've heard that when it comes to the naysayers about college education for firefighters. I've heard many a time, you don't need a college degree to be a fireman. And as if we're going to debate or argue, I'll tell you right away, that's obviously true. Yes, you do not need a college degree to be a fireman. Nor is it always true that a framed diploma on the wall doesn't mean you know what you're doing. Every naysayer can tell you about somebody he knew who was, had his head up his rear end with regard to what to do on the fire ground, but he had a college degree. So that proves that you don't need a college degree, and a college degree is not valuable. You get the attitude, why are you doing that? You think you're better than the rest of us because you have a college degree, or, that's just a waste of time and money. I did the math. I counted up what it would cost. The collective bargaining agreement says we all get paid the same. So it's just not worth my time and money. So I'd like to want to go off on a little bit of a tangent here and stress what is the value of a college degree and why is it worth the time or money to encourage those who would pursue it. So what is the personal value of an associate degree? Say a firefighter possibly aspires to be a lieutenant or higher someday, and he's considering, why should I take the credits I got in fire academy and add some more classes and work toward an associate degree. Generally, the curriculum, as we talked about, the National Fire Academy endorsed curriculum for a fire science degree will give a firefighter a more thorough technical knowledge of fire behavior, a more thorough technical knowledge of the chemistry of hazardous materials, fire prevention, fire investigation, communications, government, not just the fire department, but how the fire department fits into the larger government structure, and a beginning of some principles of leadership. It also assures that the person advancing to that level and beyond has a professional competence in reading comprehension, the ability to make a written expression of the knowledge that you have, and again, a professional level competence in mathematics. If we look beyond the associate level and look at the bachelor's level of college education that might be suitable or applicable for a fire officer who's looking to work his way up the ladder, the courses, as has been my experience with the programs that I participated in and the other programs that I've learned about and compared by speaking with other firefighters, will give the firefighter or the fire officer an advanced knowledge of fire protection systems, an advanced knowledge of the code development process, advanced knowledge of health and safety, a more in-depth understanding of how the fire department interacts with government and the role of government in the delivery of our services. The bachelor level will expose and educate the candidate to more information about industry trends and research that are important to our trade. And again, some more higher levels of leadership training come at the bachelor's level. Also, the professional competencies that a fire officer is going to have ought to have by completing the bachelor's level programs are competencies in research and publishing the results of your own research so that others can read and review it. You can have greater competencies in finance and budget, as well as strategic planning. A few will take it a step further and work on a master's degree. A master's degree in public administration, again, puts you through some experiences. They're going to raise your proficiency and your expertise and your knowledge base in evaluating the needs of your community, which again helps with justifying your budgets. They're going to increase your ability to do effective strategic planning, making policy as opposed to simply taking policy and passing it on or enforcing it. It's going to emphasize working with stakeholders in your community, again, securing funding and implementing initiatives, how to implement, manage change and implement improvements in your different organizational processes, as well as communicating and negotiating with elected officials and other agencies. So it's not always fun, but studying these things actually has value that can make you a better fire service officer, a better fire service administrator, and further enable you to compete competitively with others who are in the field looking for these fire chief jobs. So if you've ever considered being a fire chief, you know that the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association offers the service of advertising, recruiting, and assessment center experiences to challenge the experiences of candidates for these jobs and to try to advise municipalities with regard to hiring. And again, if you want to perform well in these competitive environments, the things that you learn, the things that you pick up, and the base of knowledge that you build through these college degree programs can make you a much more competitive candidate. So that kind of, I focused on what is it of personal value to you. Now I want to talk about how is it of value to your organization. And it's valuable to your organization When you take the knowledge that you've gained through one or more of these experiences and you bring it back to your organization and implement it in some way that makes a difference. For example, when I was in the Ohio Fire Executive Program, one of the early on assignments that we had was to formulate a change initiative. Look at something within your organization, some process that you think isn't functioning the way it ought to, propose a change, have it approved by your chief so that you can implement it. And then over the 2 years course of the Ohio Fire Executive Program, you're going to keep tabs on that, and you'd be able to have something conclusive to say at the end of the 2-year program about how you effectively implemented that change. And in my organization, I observed that we were still conducting our fire training like a volunteer fire department. It was conducted, one Wednesday night a month, and it was kind of random or haphazard as to who would attend. We weren't always sure if there was going to be something productive and useful to learn, or if we we're going to show up and find out that it was hose testing night, and the attendance, the percentage of people that were attending was abysmal. So I proposed a change to how we would conduct our training, and then I proposed how it would be better for the department, how we ought to implement it, how we ought to periodically check on the progress of it. And again, the point isn't feather in the cap for accomplishing something there. The point is to take what you're learning through a training opportunity, through the chance to increase the individual knowledge and bring it back to the organization and implement it and share it in a way that benefits the organization as a whole. Another example of this, in my personal case, was the Ohio Fire Executive Program has each candidate complete a research paper. Mine was based on concerns I had about the number of apparatus collisions that we were seeing in Aurora, Ohio, but that you could read about nationwide, that involved 2 emergency vehicles colliding at an intersection when they were both heading to the same alarm. And I asked myself, do our response policies in any way have anything that could be changed that might minimize or eliminate the risk of this happening in our community? And again, throughout the course of the process, the research that I completed and then produced in written form was able to justify a change in the policies that we have for responding. And again, you take the knowledge you gain individually, you bring it back to the organization and find a way to make it of value for the whole organization. One more example before I move on with that. In the Bachelor of Science program at the University of Cincinnati, I took a class on firefighter safety for which the textbook was simply NFPA Standard 1500. It was, that was the beginning and end of the whole text for the class was NFPA 1500. And in that course, the instructor required each student week by week, as we went through the course, chapter by chapter, to create a PowerPoint presentation about a given chapter in the standard NFPA 1500. And when I was done with the class, regardless of what my grade was, A, B, or C, I passed it, so that's not the point, but regardless of the grade, at the end, I had a set of PowerPoints about every chapter of the NFPA 1500 standard. And I said to myself, what can I do with this? So I said to the chief, hey, can we form a committee? Let's take 2 people from each shift. That'll be 6 individuals. We'll sit down, and once a month we'll meet for 2 hours, and we'll look at one chapter of NFPA 1500, and we'll ask ourselves, is there anything that we're doing that we could do better to bring ourselves in compliance with this standard? Things that don't necessarily cost money, but we just haven't thought about doing anything about it. And we found a multitude, at least a dozen things that we changed to bring it. We hadn't done fit testing in our SCBA masks for years. So if that's something you do regularly, that for us, that was right there was something we weren't doing. It made the case for justifying the grant application to get the hydraulic lift cots to reduce back injuries. That, and again, at least 10 other things that we were able to push through. just because I had taken a class and I was able to bring it back, share what I learned with everybody else, and find a way to make it benefit the organization. So again, it's not just a framed diploma on the wall if you use it to better your organization. That's a rebuttal for the naysayers that say a diploma on the wall doesn't make you better than me, doesn't make you a smarter firefighter. It's not about the destination, it's the journey. If along the way you can bring knowledge into your organization for the benefit of the organization, then good. So again, back to my personal story with Aurora. Viewing this from the perspective of identifying a weakness and an opportunity for improvement. My proposed solution was that our fire department should assist members to the full extent possible in pursuing a college degree, and we should formally endorse and express a preference for promoting degreed candidates. And you can choose varying degrees to which you want to implement this, but it's what I felt was the proper recommendation for my organization at this time. Again, looking at the weakness assessment as I was considering my own organization with regard to knowledge management and a knowledge management strategy or a knowledge management plan, I came to be aware that we had several domains of responsibility that were delegated to individual members or assigned to only one individual. For example, pre-incident planning was one firefighter's job. Grant writing, we had one guy who wrote the grants. Talked about Mark's radios. We had one guy that knew all about radios, that knew when the county was meeting and talking about radios, knew about the technology, but it was just one guy knew about it. We had one person coordinating water shuttle activities. We had one person who was in-house vehicle repairs. Now, this firefighter had been, previous to being a full-time firefighter, had been a dealership mechanic. He was a wonderfully qualified to be our department mechanic, but he was one individual doing it. If he got hit by a bus the next day, his knowledge was all gone and out the door. Other activities like first aid training and fire extinguisher training community, these were all resting on single individuals. And I viewed that in light of our recent experience as a weakness. So I ask, as I present this image here, what do we have here? We have silos. So silos are a metaphor. What are the characteristics of silos? Silos have great capacity, but the capacity is stored vertically. This is a metaphor for high-performing individuals that have great intellectual capital. The things that they know and the things that they do are greatly important to our organization, but they're doing it alone. Now, why are they doing it alone? In some cases, it's because nobody else wanted the job. Chief recognized something that we need to have a person on our organization that knows about this or can do that. Nobody stepped up. Somebody got assigned, and he was the only one who got assigned. Chief never assigned him a partner or an assistant. And while I like to give people the benefit of the doubt with regard to intentions, I recognize that there's a flip side to human behavior. And whether we admit it or not, for some people, if they feel a little bit insecure, once they get to the point where they're the one in the organization that knows all about a particular topic, they realize that that makes them extra important. If you are the grant writer and nobody else knows how to write a grant, nobody else knows what a DUNS number is, nobody's ever done it before, then you're important because they need you to write the grant. Well, I want to get beyond this situation where somebody's indispensable because they're the only person that knows how to do it. So the challenge my organization faced was, how do we transfer that tacit or implicit knowledge? How do we transfer relational capital? We had a lack of structural capital, the structures, the organizational structures that were needed to facilitate transferring knowledge in these ways. So again, back to the opportunities for improvement to counter our weaknesses, my proposed solution was that we should have a formalized mentorship program. The fire department should endorse a formal mentorship program for the fire officers. Seasoned officers who have been captains, battalion chiefs, whatever level your organization has, for many years. They've seen it all and done it all practically with regard to what can happen in your community. They have a great deal of tacit knowledge. Junior officers, the new lieutenant, often don't even know what it is that they don't know. So they don't know what to ask. Other times you get somebody who's maybe a little too cocky, and the senior officer says, well, he's not going to listen to my advice anyway. I'll let him go his own way and learn his own lessons through the school of hard knocks. But the fact is, the reality is that junior officers need guidance in navigating gray areas and learning to use judgment. And we made it clear in implementing this mentorship program that we expect the senior officers to have these discussions, to share this knowledge, to help them navigate the gray areas. Well, the policy or the guideline says this, but this is a situation that I've never exactly dealt with before. How do I navigate that? If the junior officer is struggling, we're asking the senior officer, what have you done to mentor him and help him find his way in dealing with these problems? Again, sometimes there's social or personality barriers that prevent one person accepting advice from another, especially if it's not been asked. But by making these assignments formal, the organization is telling both of them what's expected. To the junior, we expect this senior officer to have these talks with you. We expect you to receive it and use it to increase your judgment, your wisdom, and your tacit knowledge. And again, to the senior officers, we're expecting you to make the effort to transfer that knowledge. Many times this is done through storytelling, analogies, and metaphors that can all relate to, incidents that happened in the past, experiences that have had, again, tacit knowledge. You're not always able to explain why you know what you know, but if you think about it long enough, if you're the senior member, you can usually find a story to fit a true story of what happened sometime in the past that helps convey what you're trying to pass on to a junior officer. And we've asked our people to work on that. Similar to, related to, but not exactly the same, related to mentorships are apprenticeships. My proposal for our organization was that the fire department should adopt an apprenticeship program for the various domains of responsibility as delegated by the chief. So if your job descriptions are like ours in my organization, whether you're a firefighter, paramedic, lieutenant, captain, what have you, there's a job description, and probably at the end of it, it says, and any other duties assigned by the chief. So my goal was that in every one of these specialized areas, it should not be just one person, not a silo metaphor that's taking care of this responsibility. We should have a senior member paired with a junior member, typically 5 or more years apart in seniority, to work together by assignment. And this promotes a seamless future succession in routine and vital processes. For example, I told you that our fire department mechanic, a firefighter paramedic, he's a lieutenant now, 20 plus years of experience. Before he was a firefighter, he was a mechanic, worked in a dealership. He knows a great deal about all things automotive, but he was functioning up until this policy was implemented like a silo. If you needed to know who to call to order tires for the truck, or where's the list of what's the mileage in all the vehicles so we can know when they're due for oil changes, or, do we get this part from International, or do we get this part from Horton, or do we get this part from All American Fire Equipment? This mechanic had all that knowledge, and he had all the files and all the maintenance records, and he was the one that knew how to navigate them. We paired him with a junior firefighter who's only been on the fire department a few years, and said, look, this individual's got 20 plus years experience. He's the department mechanic. You're going to be his apprentice, and I want you to be able to tell me how to navigate the maintenance records. Show me the schedule of what rigs are due for oil changes and when they're due. If I tell you that we need to order a battery or tires or wiper blades, you know who to call so that you can do it. So if this other individual retires or steps out into the crosswalk and gets hit by a bus and is gone, we have another firefighter ready to step up and take that role. That's apprenticeship. And here's an example of what this looked like within my organization. Again, I recognize that the City of Aurora Fire Department with 40 members is a small scale compared to some communities in Ohio, but you can scale this up or down for each thing, for each, for example, fire extinguisher training. We have a firefighter who answers community requests to come out and give a fire extinguisher class to employees. He has an apprentice assigned to assist him. We have a primary CPR instructor. We have an assistant assigned to apprentice with him. We have firefighters who administer various software, whether it's the EMS reporting software, the active 911 software. There's an assistant assigned to apprentice and support that activity, as well as pre-incident plans and so forth. So as with any type of change or improvements to processes within an organization, it's not accomplished simply by issuing a new policy. Chief can type up a wonderful dissertation about how we're going to do this. We're going to acquire knowledge, and we're going to manage knowledge, and we're going to share knowledge, and we're going to have mentorships and apprenticeships, send the email blast out to everybody, but that's not how it gets done. These type of things, in order to be effective, need to be shepherded along the way. We need to have follow-up on them to evaluate over time how they're doing, look if programs are getting off track and need to be set back on course. So after the first year of doing this, I had formal meetings with each of these individual assigned groups, the vehicle mechanics, the CPR trainers, the fire extinguisher trainers, the pre-incident planning team, and asked them, so how is this going to the apprentice? Do you feel that you've learned what all you need to do if you were left alone to do this by yourself? Or are there ways that we need to improve and continue to make progress toward you being able to handle this yourself? Do you need any other resources to make this happen? So again, this, this takes some monitoring and checking back to keep this program on track. Within my own organization, I can tell you that 2022 is the next kind of mark on the timeline that's going to challenge my organization's readiness, because 2022 is when I anticipate the chief of my department retiring as well. In 1997, just 25 years prior to 2022, I was part of the first wave of a hiring boom that ended up doubling the size of our full-time staff from 1997, 98, and 99. So starting in 2022, I'm going to have a great number of my personnel reach 25 years on the job. Some of them may want to retire at 25, others may go into the drop, I don't know. But I expect to enter into a potential period of turnover at that time. And it's my intention to have this knowledgement program working to pay these dividends and pay benefits when I hit that stretch in time, which isn't too far out. So in review, intellectual capital is a very valuable asset to our organization. Our organizational knowledge must be preserved and kept within. In order to do this, a knowledge management program is a vital tool. Take all opportunities you can to increase your organization's intellectual capital. Encourage people to pursue additional knowledge and personal growth through pursuing a college degree. Implement organizational structures that disseminate, share, spread, and pass on that knowledge that our people bring within the organization, and spread it for the betterment of the organization. So if you're still with me, I thank you. I hope that what I experienced, this was a class that I took at some level, but it wasn't just a class where I said, hey, I want to regurgitate that and share it with other officers in the state of Ohio that might want to hear about it. I felt like it had some meaning for me because it had direct application in my department. And if my experiences in any way helped you have a better understanding of that, or you think that it can help your organization. I'm flattered that you spent the time to hear me talk about what I have to say. So let me find a way to exit out of my full screen. Stop sharing. All right, Misha, are you still there?
I'm here. If anybody has any
Okay.
questions, you can ask them now. See if anybody types anything here. I have
Thank
great
you, Paul.
appreciation.
Paul Slinsky from Macedonia. I see threw a message up for me. Thank you, Paul. So yeah, like I said, I'm flattered if you're that I see we still have 32 people logged in and you listen to what I had to say. We don't have to have any kind of question and answer session. I see I went on for about an hour, and again, I hope this was of value to you, and thank you again for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.